Let's do this.
And we're live. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to your Bedroom Super Producer podcast. We are your hosts. My name is JT.
My name is BK.
And today, BK, we are talking about someone who MTV deemed the most important music producer of the last 20 years.
Interesting. Who are we talking about, JT?
Listen, I think that a lot of people might not be familiar with this man's work, but he literally produced across many, many genres, many different decades. And I think that he's been influential both in the urban world, the country world, the rock and metal world. And the guy's name is Rick Rubin.
Oh, yes, Rick Rubin, the master.
Your producer's favorite producer.
Damn right. I think even Dre recognizes him as the ultimate pinnacle of producers out there.
Listen, what's so different about Rick Rubin in your mind?
What's different about Rick Rubin is that I see him more as a coach. He knows how to get that special flavor, that special candy that an original artist is gonna have, and he knows how to get it out of them to make that hit song or that hit record. That's how I see him. Oh, he's not like overly producing. He's not telling them what to do. He's really like taking something that's already in there and making them see that it's magic and that's what the song should be about. What about you?
Interesting. Just along the lines of what you just said, he was interviewed by Rolling Stones in 2014, and he actually said, "I'm the coach of the team, and if the team wins, it's really good for me, and I had a hand in it." And I think that really portrays how he perceives his involvement, where it kind of tells the whole story of his career, where he does not want to be in front of the camera. He doesn't give a whole lot of interviews, and he really just wants to bathe in good music. And I think that that's one thing. Aside from that, and I think you touched upon it, he's really, and a lot of people often call him that, and I quote, again, it's from the Rolling Stones interview, the interviewer says, "This is how we're going to get back to where you can be your best." So whenever an artist kind of has lost touch of what made them so special in the beginning, they go to Shangri-La, Rick Rubin's studio, and they kind of spend a lot of time with him, just listening to music, talking about life, and a lot of great artists became great again by meeting Rick Rubin in that setting, and just really going back to their roots and trying to figure out what made them special, like I said, at the beginning of their career. So he's kind of a master at pinpointing how artists used to work and what was their approach, or what they were listening to when they created such and such, seminal works in their careers. And he helps artists kind of go back to that fire that they once had.
Yeah, true. Like he kind of finds a way to kind of remove the whole pressure of being in the studio environment, because I think for most artists, at the beginning, it's magical. It's your first record. You've been working on it for pretty much your whole life. You have access to all this equipment, this studio. It's it's awesome. You can make these changes and everything, and you see it as magical, and you, in a way, you're able to bring your tracks to life and to use that magic, that good vibe for that first album. But once the first album is done, you have that whole pressure of expectations of now people know who you are, now people know what you can do. They're expecting something kind of in link with the first album, or an evolution, or they, so you have this whole new pressure on your shoulder. And I think that Rick, what he does is that's why he brings them in his environment, in his studio, where there's open air outside. It's very open. There's these big windows. You've got the big view. You can see the sea. You can smell the sea from his studio. To come back down to earth and to really get back to what was it that you loved so much about like making that first record, or when you first started playing guitar or playing bass or whatever instrument that you play, and to get them at ease, to be able to get to that next step, and to be able to produce again without being like almost frozen by the success that you had on your previous albums.
Absolutely. And I think that this tells a very different story than what kids nowadays are being told by the mainstream media, because we see all these kids nowadays that are 17, 18, 19, and they blow up because of social media. But it's a completely different thing. It's a completely different beast to tame, to be out there, producing albums, doing shows for 30 to 40 years, and still being excited about what you do as a musician.
Exactly. And staying relevant without repeating yourself, without copying, it's very difficult to stay yourself for 30 years and not like with all the different, I don't know, producers that you can work with, or different musicians. I think once you have access to a lot of tools, a lot of studios, a lot of gear, it's almost kind of the same. And I think we were talking about this last week or the week before. It's almost the same as not having any tools. When you have too many tools, you kind of get lost. You're touring, you have the manager, you have the interviews, you have it. You kind of lose that special magic. And I think Rick kind of coaches them back to just to get back at the basic stuff, and to say like what was magical about the first time. Say what can you bring to the table now so it becomes magical again.
Absolutely. And to your point, I was reading this interview with Rick. He was talking about Death Magnetic, the album he worked on with Metallica.
Yeah.
And exactly like you said, he said that Lars, the drummer, he would always be drawn to the computer to try and copy and paste stuff together, trying to build up, skeletons for tracks. And he was like, no, get off the computer. You guys need to play as a band, get that energy of 4 guys playing the songs together in one, in the same room, basically, and try to get that feeling of what it once was when they started as a band, like in the garage, or,
Yeah, exactly.
And so even the most seasoned professionals will get caught up in that, like that trap of relying on your tools and your plugins and your gadgets to do the work for you, basically, as a musician.
It's also that it can be time consuming if you have to play everything perfectly in a single take. It can be very time consuming, and sometimes you lose that little bit of magic if you keep playing something over and over and over and over again. So that's why sometimes musicians, they prefer to like grab that magic and say, okay, there was a mistake there, let's just cut it out, overdub over it. But you can get stuck in this loop, like you said, of like you can have a copy pasted part, drums that come from take number 65 and guitars from take number 150, and that can be an editing nightmare. But usually rock bands, that's what they do, but you lose that magic. It takes like a seasoned, like a veteran producer to understand that, oh yes, we can take that take. It's the same energy. No, we can't. It's well played, but the energy is different. We can't take it. And the fact that Rick Rubin is such a minimalist, like a very like organic producer, I can totally see him just say, just play it right. Let's not copy paste everything.
Agreed. I think that, and just so we put our younger audience in context, let's go back to the beginnings. Rubin was born in Little Beach, New Jersey, March 10th, 1963. So that makes him, I think, 57 years old now.
Mm-hmm.
So he's certainly the oldest of the producers we covered so far on this podcast. And even though you've never heard of him, the guy has a net worth of $270 million. So he must be doing something right.
True. But even though you've never heard of him, I'm sure that if we go through the list of bands, everyone has heard of him.
Well, see, so that's the something that's very special about Rick Rubin. So can you tell us a bit more about the legendary artists he's either put on the map or helped get back on the scene?
Well, let's say if we start from the beginning, he was pretty much the one who started Def Jam with Russell Simmons. That was a pretty big, influential moment in urban/hip hop music. So every time you're listening to a Beastie Boys album, an LL Cool J album, a Public Enemy album, a Run DMC album, Rick Rubin probably had a hand in the songs that you're listening to. So just these four guys, for me, it's incredible to have produced them. If he had only produced these four bands, it would have been already pretty awesome. But then if we go really, really fast through his legacy, Rage Against the Machine, he produced for them. If we go more metal, Slayer is one of my favorite bands. He produced Slayer. People will often be surprised that he produced them, but he did. Red Hot Chili Peppers. There's an awesome documentary on YouTube, Funky Monks. If you guys want to check it out, it's pretty awesome to see the recording process where they just lived in this big house in LA and just recorded their album with Rick Rubin, all the way to Metallica, like you said, Linkin Park, all the way to Justin Timberlake that we talked about a little bit last week, Kanye West, and even going to more country, Johnny Cash, Dixie Chicks. So he's really a producer with an incredible palette and I think an incredible feel, be it for songwriting, I think, more than many of the other producers out there who usually are producing in a very specific genre and are more into the technical aspect of producing and are hired for a specific sound that they bring to the table. For him, I think it was really that whole coaching aspect that we talked about in the earlier, and also the whole how to get the artist through the songwriting process. I think that's his strength, and that's why people call upon him.
Absolutely. I'll add to your list Jay-Z,
of course,
Eminem,
yeah,
Adele. He's worked with Ed Sheeran. And I tried to dig more on the internet, but he at some point he was supposed to have worked on something with K Tranada, actually also fellow producer from Montreal right here.
Wow, I didn't know that.
So yeah, there was a picture that surfaced around 2014 or 2015, but I don't know if he worked on either 99% or the next one. I just don't know. Maybe it wasn't all that fruitful, but at least, I mean, it's cool to see the kid from our hometown has worked with Rick as well.
But he's managed to stay pretty relevant, like we said, like to stay relevant for like 30 years. It's almost unheard of. I think at some point even the best producers, they kind of lose touch, uh, like with the kids, the new generation, with like what people are doing. But he's managed to just stay right in there and to just go right ahead and produce tons of stuff. He's produced stuff with ZZ Top. I think he could have been in the band. They have the same look. I think he did some stuff with Lana Del Rey also recently. Like Tom Petty. I think he even worked with I think he worked with Travis Scott recently also.
Yeah.
So he's really out there. Like, it's, for me, he's one of the figures of this century, the music scene. There's a lot of link to Rick Rubin, whichever genre or of a type of music you're talking about. There's a lot of arrows usually pointing towards him.
You know, BK, as we've grown our company, delicatebeats.com, we get a lot of questions from, budding and up-and-coming producers regarding software and, kind of the techniques and more of the technical aspect of music making. And I just wanted to read a little quote from the Fader that kind of summarizes Rick's involvement in a musical project. And I just wanted to go to show that you don't necessarily need to be, a rocket scientist or a super savvy techie on the computer or the gadgets that you own in your studio to actually have a great career in music. And so the author said, Rick is a non-traditional producer. He doesn't play any instruments, and he can't operate a mixing board or a Pro Tools setup. In fact, he seems to be actively uninterested in spending much time in a recording studio. Instead, Rubin is best known for his talents as a listener, with his ability to offer insightful notes on how artists can improve their songs. He's kind of a psychological problem solver, skilled at getting artists to a creative place where they can record and finish the best album they can deliver.
True. True.
I think that's really his incredible and unique skill, where, like we said, he can just pinpoint where an artist is at psychologically and help them get on with their lives almost, and find that newfound passion for their craft.
True. I think like he's a perfect example to show, like you said, that you don't need to be a master of all trades. Even if sometimes that's what we think we need to be in this day and age of the bedroom super producing era. He shows that for him, I think, the most important things are first the song idea, listening, and also having a great memory. I think the fact that he doesn't get stuck behind the board or behind a Pro Tools console or playing the instrument, I think in a way it gives him clarity into the whole process. He always asks himself these simple questions. Is it a good song? Is the arrangement good? And then he listens to when he gets final mixes from the mixing engineer, and then he just listens. He uses his ears. I think I read somewhere that he had a set of $50,000 speakers at his studio, and that's where he listens to the final mixes that he gets sent, because sometimes he's working on so many projects, he can't always be in the same place where they're mixing, where they're recording. So the mixing engineer sends him the high quality audio files, and then he just listens to them. And he's able to pinpoint these minute changes that they've done on the mix, and these little changes, the ideas of a certain passage from the verse to the chorus. And he's able to see those changes even if he wasn't there. I think that's his strength. Good memory, and the fact that he listens, like you said earlier.
Yeah. he must be also very humble. I'm pretty sure he's much better technically than he'll let us believe.
True, he must be talented. I'm sure he can play guitar. I'm sure he can play keyboard. He focuses on making the song better. I think he knows that he doesn't have to be the singer when he's at a recording session. He doesn't have to be the bass player or the drummer or the mixing engineer. They're already these professional, the band, these great technical knowledge people who are working there. He doesn't need to do their jobs, or he doesn't need to show them that he knows how to do their jobs. He needs to be doing his job, which is finalizing these 12 great song ideas and taking them to the next level to release for that artist. So in a way, he knows exactly his place in the production process. So he doesn't want to be doing someone else's job. He knows exactly what he has to do, and it's if more people knew exactly what they had to do in this whole music production process, I think we'd have even better music than we have, even better albums and life-changing albums than we have today.
Yeah, and I think that that's actually something I've been struggling personally for many years now, and I call it the artistic ego. And I think that what's interesting about Rick Rubin is the fact that with his whole Zen Buddhist monk life practice, if you will, he shows that once you enter into a studio or a creative setup and you leave your ego at the door, this is where really you can achieve the greatest work.
Exactly. Yeah. True. That's
and to that point also, his meditation practice is quite unique also in the music world. I think he said, in fact, that when working on Californication with the Red Hot Chili Peppers, they actually meditated before each session together as a group. That's quite inspiring, I think. We used to do that actually before our sessions, and it did make a big difference, didn't it?
Like calm down, put your head at the right place, project your energy to get that special loop, that special sample that you need for your track. True. I totally agree. Yeah. It's true that he's very spiritual in everything he does. He's not afraid to show it to people. He's not gonna be spiritual in hiding or meditating in hiding and then getting drunk with the people just to be in the mainstream. He totally owns it, and I think that's one of the things that people respect about him. He owns the fact that he's him, and that's the way it is. And if you give his way a chance, you might get these little gems and be enlightened for your music recording process.
Absolutely. Another thing that I found really interesting, and that's something I've come to find out myself, is that contrary to most artists now who are night owls, they'll probably get in the studio around midnight and leave around 5 a.m. He says that he never works at night. In fact, and I quote from a Rolling Stones interview, he says, "I try to not do it anymore. Now we typically start working at noon and are usually out of the studio at 6. If things are really going good, 7. So I found that really interesting because, and we've talked about that several times, where the human brain is actually more creative during daylight.
Exactly. Yeah. Like in the morning. Sometimes you have these small creative windows that you're at your peak pretty much when usually it's after you get up. So probably 2 or 3 hours after you've gotten up, you're at your best. It's very difficult to, I think we talked about this before. It's very difficult to, let's say if you have a normal day job, to do your 8 hours, 9 hours of work come back home and then be creative for another 4 or 5 hours. It's very difficult.
Very, very difficult.
Yeah.
I remember when I had a day job, I could probably pull like 2 hours and then I'd just be exhausted and I'd fall asleep right then and there.
Yeah.
It's but yeah, I mean, I invite you guys out there listening to the podcast to try it. Try to cook up the first beat around 7 or 8 a.m. and see how that works for you.
Yeah, that could be a brand new way to be creative.
Yep. Listen, I got a cool story also. Do you know how Rick Rubin ended up buying Shangri-La, his Malibu studio, or estate, I should say?
No. Tell me more.
So there was a point where he would have his engineer or one of his crew members go around, I guess, California, and they would bring the same exact kit. So the same kick drum, snare drum, the same microphones, and the same DAT recorder. And they would go around a bunch of different studios that they were looking at. And out of all of these blind tests, as he would call them, Shangri-La, which was a beat up, super, super old recording studio that looked like nothing, and they weren't even sure when they looked at it in person that it would sound any good. And out of all of the rooms, the main recording room at Shangri-La was the one that had that kick and snare drum piece sound better.
Wow.
And so they had and so when they recorded the like someone drumming on this little kit, and they would listen without telling themselves or knowing where the recording was made at. And like I said, Shangri-La won on the blind test. So it goes to show you that sometimes it's good to also close your eyes and just let your ears do the work.
Yeah, exactly. Well, by closing your eyes, you're pretty much limiting the amount of information that your brain has to work with. So more processing for your ears, because if you're looking at something, your brain has to process what you see, what you hear, what you smell, etc. So I think the whole not looking at your screen while listening to the final mix, I think it's good advice.
Exactly. And I myself am a kind of guilty of doing that, where I'll look at the meters on my Ableton Live session, or I'll look at the colors of the tracks, or I'll look at the way the finished song looks in terms of arrangement, and I'll let my eyes guide me instead of my ears. And so I thought that was really interesting, because it's kind of like when you visit a home or a condo that you are looking to purchase. If you just look at the way the kitchen is designed, the cabinets and the color of the fridge and stove, you might miss the fact that there's a sewer plant nearby and it smells bad. I mean, I'm just saying that because he was saying that Shangri-La looked terrible. It was all beat up. Nobody had done any work on it for 30 years. The previous owners were like Bob Dylan and his group, I think. And so there was just a bunch of hippies that kind of left this in disarray. But there's magic to that place now. I mean, nowadays it's kind of a high-end spa for almost retired artists who want to give a little boost or a last little push to their careers. So I thought that was just funny the way he decided to buy this incredible estate. And like you said at the beginning of the episode, I guess it helps that it's in the heart of Malibu. You have the sea right down the hill, and it's just, an incredible piece of land also. Like I think it has like 2 or 3 studios, one in an old beat up bus also. So it's really...
And you know that old bus was Bob Dylan's touring bus for the US.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
No, I didn't know that.
So because at the end of a tour, they parked it there and then it never moved.
And then they refurbished it into a like state of the art
Yeah,
recording studio.
well, I think they just patched it up a little bit, and now it's like a mixing room. There's a
Oh,
desk,
okay.
there's a couple of speakers, and I think there's a Pro Tools rig in there, a couple of CDJs in there also. You can see it when you. I think he did an interview with Pharrell and Kendrick Lamar when they're just sitting down in the backyard, and you see the bus.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've
It's on
seen
the
part
side.
of that in.
Yeah, it's seems like a very inspiring place. It goes to show, like you said, that it's not just about the way it looks and did people take care of it or not, or etc. It's more also about the sometimes a place can have a soul too,
Exactly.
and there can be this special energy, and maybe that the fact that they recorded a lot of old albums there, it has this special magic in the walls and the way that there's a special resonance in there. So we never know. So sometimes it's it's good sometimes not to think that it's better just because it's high tech and it's perfectly designed and it sounds exactly. Sometimes having these little mistakes here and there and a crack here and a crack there can still have a magic, something that brings some soul to the sound that you're looking for.
Yeah, and I think that now that I'm 40, I can honestly say that it's not just some audiophile bullshit. I think that there's really something that we're missing if we're just doing everything in a box, where we don't try to reamp stuff or maybe, put our synthesizer parts through an amp that in front of which there's a mic or several mics. And I invite our listeners to get their music out of the box and experiment with different types of re-recording techniques, or because in those days, like you said, the air in the room and there's something about sound bouncing off of different materials, people even, like it really does make a difference.
True. It does make a difference. It doesn't have to be a super elaborate scheme and having to deal with like old synthesizers that get out of tune and anything. It can just be a stump box, just rerouting your signal to a guitar pedal or to like an analog reverb or something like that. Just that can bring a little bit of magic to your sound. Or even, I think even reamping, let's say your master out in a small recording console, an old Marquee console or something, or a preamp or something, can give that noise, that little bit of lusciousness that's required for your sound. So don't be afraid to experiment. I think that's the whole message that we're sending out there.
Yes. So to close this little discussion, what's your favorite Rick Rubin produced track?
Whoa, it's a very difficult question again. We're covering these awesome producers that have so many different awesome mind-bending tracks. I'm probably gonna go with my I think it's one of my all-time favorite albums. I'm gonna say Give It Away, Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's
Wow,
like this.
wow.
The sound of the whole Blood Sugar Sex Magic album for me was life changing. I think it's one of the albums that made me start playing bass without knowing it. There's something about that special bass sound on that album that I think I didn't even know what bass was back then, but there was something in it. And then when I realized what it was, Flea slapping that Music Man bass for me was a life-changing album. So I'm gonna go with the Give It Away. You?
Wow. I'd even say that Give It Away in that particular Red Hot Chili Peppers album kind of drew me into funk without me knowing it.
Yeah.
And from there, I started to go back in the 80s and 70s and discover all of the funk greats. But really, that album, there was something incredibly magic about that album. No pun intended.
Yeah.
Okay. For me personally, obviously, I'm more of a hip hop head, so I'm gonna go with Beastie Boys' "No Sleep Till Brooklyn" off of License to Ill.
Yeah. That was, for me, I think that album, that was the first time I was exposed to Rick Rubin. License to Ill, and also for me, the first time I heard about him was also Public Enemy. Public Enemy and Beastie Boys were the two like urban warfare albums, as I'd like to call them, that like got me into Rick Rubin. Like, yeah, Bring the Noise, for me, that was life-changing also.
Yeah. A lot of great legendary material that can be pulled out of his vault for sure. We might have to do a second episode on this guy, because there's just so much to...
Yeah, just on the discography, there's so many. We could dissect song by songs, era by era, genre by genre, group, say band by band. There's so many good stuff.
People also don't know just how much great stuff he helped carve out in the metal scene. I mean, I was a big Danzig fan, and I had no idea prior to researching this episode that he had produced a bunch of albums for them.
Oh yeah, he was really very instrumental in promoting the whole metal scene, be it Danzig, be it, like you said, Metallica, be it Slayer. Produced a couple of albums for Slayer.
Even the System of a Down.
Yeah, System of a Down. So lots of stuff. Limp Bizkit, I think he did. Slipknot. I don't think that Slipknot had the best experience with him, but I read a couple of articles of blog spots here and there that said that they didn't really like working with him, but I think he still produced them, so he must have done something right. I think there was also some comments about the members of Muse, the rock band from the British rock band, that said that they said, I think when they received the Grammy, or I don't know what award it was, they said that Rick Rubin showed them how not to produce an album. So it's a good diss, but at the same time, if he showed them something, that's something, right?
Well, they won a Grammy, no? So
yeah, that's the thing. So I didn't go into details with all who said what to who and what happened because of what, but I mean, with a list like that and the number of bands that he's produced, say I'm sure he knows what he's doing, regardless of the comments from these bands.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure he'll be the first one to tell you that it doesn't always end up being like a timeless piece of music that he'll produce. Like he's open to say that with the such and such artists, it just didn't gel and nothing came out of the sessions, and that was that. So
yeah, of course.
I mean, he wouldn't say that that everything that he'll touch will become gold. Like, that's not his thing at all.
Exactly. He tries to have the best energy possible and to do his best, but at the same time, you can't always be right. And like we always said, if you're not making mistakes, you're not getting better, you're not growing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that covers a bit of ground for Rick Rubin. Obviously, like we said, there's way too much good music to go over in just one short episode. But I just want to invite everyone out there to Google his name, Rick Rubin, and see for yourselves just how incredible his body of work is. Again, from a guy that probably can't take a laptop, open up Ableton Live or FL Studio and make a beat just on his own. So that goes to show you that there's so many different things that you can do just to be a part of this incredible industry that music is.
Indeed.
And to close out this episode, BK, if the people want to get in touch with us, maybe give us some recommendations for future episodes, or maybe support the channel financially, where can they head at?
Well, first of all, they can subscribe to the podcast, leave a comment, be it on Spotify or on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast info. And also just visit us at delicatebeats.com, subscribe to the newsletter, get the goodies, get the free goodies. And also, if you want to take your production beats and tracks to the next level, get the serum packs that we're offering, get the contact packs and instruments that we're offering, and start making that music and go to the next level.
Agreed.
And usually, what do we say at the end?
At the end, I'm gonna say, stay creative, stay safe. Keep a safe distance with your spouse or your kids, in my case. And make them bangers.
All right, guys. So we'll see you next week.
Peace out.
Peace.